Well, at least the Silicon Valley Roller Girls are ready to go. They're sending number 222, Ginfluenza, to the jammer line. And they are 52 seconds ahead of time, because that's just how they roll in San Jose. Always 52 seconds ahead.
And on the line for Pikes Peak, that's going to be Serious Business. Pikes Peak just skated about over on track one about an hour and a half, 2 hours ago. They're ready to go again.
Serious Business with the serious face mask. That thing's super cool. And with the whistle, we're off. Both jammers shoving up the middle. And Serious Business pushing to the front, while 222 Ginfluenza getting stymied at the back.
Serious Business grabs that lead jammer status.
Serious Business, meanwhile, still struggling with that Pikes Peak front wall, finally able to break free.
Business calls it off in the middle of the pack, grabbing 2 points for Pikes Peak.
Quick two for Colorado Springs Pikes Peak Roller Girls as they grab that early lead. The Pikes Peak Derby Dames All-Stars up against the Silicon Valley Roller Girls Dot Kamikazes. Dot Kamikazes in black, Pikes Peak in green, and Bionic Baby Doll jamming for Pikes Peak. Up against number one Trick Pony. I'm sorry, that's for Pikes Peak. I had the teams backwards. I'm even looking at the shirt and I know it's Silicon Valley and I said the wrong team.
One Trick Pony going up against the Silicon Valley ladies. I watched her a couple hours ago and it was a sight to see. She really made her mark out there on the track. But right now she's being bested by the jammer from San Jose.
Heavy bit of a scrum in the pack early on in this jam, but both jammers able to break out. And the pack racing it up pretty quickly, trying to stay ahead. And as they re-enter the pack, Bionic Baby Doll calls off the jam, but Pikes Peak able to grab 1 point. And that extends their lead to 3-0. As we reset with Silicon Valley sending PMS number 247, or 24-7, depending on how you like to pronounce it, to the line.
While number 6-4, that's Penny for the Pikes Peak women.
It's a very hot poppy mic, isn't it? This one. And Penny taking the outside, has to slide to a knee. PMS, meanwhile, stymied behind the 4 back wall of Pikes Peak blockers.
And
Penny
the
finally
jammer
released.
from Pikes Peak finds her way to the front, grabbing that lead jammer status.
And PMS rolling around the outside. 2 skaters to beat. Finally extends the pack as far as it can, and she is breaking free as well.
And that's the jam. After grabbing 1 for Pikes Peak. On the line again for Pikes Peak, that's Serious Business, number 00.
Pretty Penny able to pick up that point just before the jam called off, and now we're at 4-0 Pikes Peak lead. 27 minutes roughly to go in the half. Mad for Gravity jamming for the Silicon Valley Roller Girls. I'll do their lineup after this next jam, since I'm like,
I know.
both jammers caught up in the pack. Mad for Gravity stuck towards the back. Has a heavy shoulder thrown up at the front.
Stringing that pack along. They got to let her go. She is your lead jammer. That's Serious Business.
Serious Business is through. Mad for Gravity, however, still stuck as she gets a nice hit from Cat Black and Blue, or Black and Blue rather. to knock her out and recycle her farther to the back. As at the front of the pack, Serious Business finally forced to be let go as she had stretched things as far as she possibly could.
Both teams losing a player in that last encounter.
And Man for Gravy finally breaking out. This is on her initial pass. Serious Business, however, picking up the 4 points on the scoring pass. And that will extend the lead now 13-0. And let's rip through Silicon Valley Roller Girls Kamikaze's lineup. Number 08, Absolutely Scabulous. 0 times 42, Bionic Baby Doll. Number 10, Demanda Rumble. 17, Hot Sriracha. 203, Bell Ringer. 222, Ginfluenza. 23, Evil Twin. 247, PMS. Number 4, Mad for Gravy. 404, Luna Chick. 789, Laurar. Number 8, Jem Jones. And 86, Smash and Burn. Those are the Silicon Valley Kamikazes. And
taking that lead jammer status again. That's one trick pony for Pikes Peak.
And Ginfluenza able to slap her a hip check, knock her out of bounds, and give her enough of a time to break through the pack finally. But she was lead jammer and able to pick up the 4 points, call off the jam, taking us to 17-0 Pikes Peak.
During this timeout, I'm going to run through Pikes Peak's lineup. That's 00 Serious Business, 007 Brass Moose Knuckle, number 1 Trick Pony, number 18 Pepper Sleigh, number 1900 Russian Bride. That's a good one. Number 30 Mickey Torque, number 365 Daisy Dukem. Number 4, 7 Deadly Spins. Number 420, Destiny Blaze. Number 510, Sangria Punch. Number 52, Cat Black and Blue. Number 64, Pretty Penny. And number N013, Parker. That is the lineup for Pikes Peak for this game.
And Pikes Peak sending Pretty Penny to the line up against Bionic Baby Doll for Silicon Valley. Each team with 2 in the pack currently and 2 in the penalty box. And with the whistle, we stand still for a bit, waiting for blockers to get out of the penalty box. And Bionic Baby Doll taking a big shoulder that knocks her to her Bionic Baby Doll side.
And grabbing that lead jammer status, that's Pretty Penny up front. Number 64 for Pikes Peak.
Pretty Penny able to outsprint that micro pack and break out for lead jammer. Bionic Baby Doll, meanwhile, re-engaging after being recycled well to the back. 2 Pikes Peak blockers to beat, and they are doing a great job of holding her up. And that allows Pretty Penny to loop through and stretch the pack out.
Grabbing another 5 points for Pikes Peak.
Meanwhile, Bionic Baby Doll stuck back to the back of the pack again after being recycled one more time. As the Pikes Peak defense just doing a number on her. And Silicon Valley passing off the Jammer Star to Evil Twin, finally escaping the pack.
Transforming from pivot to jammer and looking to make her mark, but that is the end of that jam before anything dramatic could happen there.
Pretty Penny, knowing what was coming, called off the jam after picking up a point, but she had wrapped up several bonus jam points there, rolling us up to 28-0 now. Pikes Peak lead.
On the line now for Pikes Peak, that's Serious Business. Official timeout happening right now.
And I'm going to take a moment during the official timeout to talk about the raffle, because we've got quite the raffle going on. If you haven't bought your ticket, you should do so. Well, not immediately. Wait until halftime or after the bout's over. But you should buy a ticket. Tickets are 1 for $1, 6 for $5, 10 for the length from your nose to your finger. They don't specify which finger you might be able to pick. And if you happen to be tall or know someone who's very tall, for $20 you can get as many tickets as stretch the height of a person. and they do not specify person. I suggest you not pick me. I'm not very tall. Anyhow, there are 2 baskets being raffled off both Saturday night and Sunday night. One basket geared towards skaters, the other towards the fans. It's got local goods. We'll go through those in a minute. But now back to roller derby. PMS back on the jammer line for Silicon Valley.
While Serious Business, once again, is taking that line for Pikes Peak.
And both jammers trapped in the back, but Serious Business managing to push through to the front as PMS knocked to the outside and has to recycle back. Pia has, however, caught back up to her now. And both jammers in a scrum at the front. PMS had one skater to beat, but others caught up to her, finally able to sneak through, and that, I believe, is the first lead jammer for the Silicon Valley Roller Girls. As Serious Business coming back through again. PMS now engaging the pack on her scoring pass. Picks up her points, calls off the jam, and that puts Silicon Valley on the board with 4.
Once again, One Trick Ponies taking the line for Pikes Peak.
Up against Mad for Gravy for Silicon Valley. Dot Kamikazes with a 1 skater disadvantage in the pack as they have 1 sitting. And with that, the Pikes Peak defense will shove Mad for Gravy well to the outside and recycle her far back as they possibly can. While at the front of the pack, Pikes Peak is through with lead jammer for Trick Pony. Meanwhile, Mad for Gravy through, but the pack speeding up. And One Trick Pony able to grab 4 points, call off the jam. And that extends their lead up to 36-4 now. Pikes Peak stretching things out as Silicon Valley sends Ginfluenza to the line, where she will face off with Pretty Penny for Pikes Peak. Little jammer jockeying at the beginning. Ginfluenza trying to throw a little hip to Pretty Penny to knock her off her game. Doesn't quite work, but she does get to the front of the pack first. And the Silicon Valley defense turns it up, and that allows Ginfluenza to break out as lead jammer. Second lead jammer of the night for the Silicon Valley Roller Girls.
While Pretty Penny finds herself recycled up front for Pikes Peak.
And she's recycled back just as Ginfluenza enters the pack on her scoring pass. Ginfluenza struggling her way through, and Pretty Penny being called for the forearm penalty. So we have now got a power jam on the line for Silicon Valley, just what they needed to start closing that gap. Bit of a sausage passive offense for Silicon Valley, and that allows Ginfluenza to break out for 5 points. As she rolls back in, re-engages again. Silicon Valley stopping, trying to open up a door for her. Not quite enough. Pikes Peak defense is stretching things, trying to bridge as far as they can. Have to finally let her go. Another 5 for Ginfluenza, taking this jam up to a total of 10 points, I believe. Once again, re-entering, gets hipped out to the side. They'll try to recycle her back, but the Silicon Valley defense waiting and laying in wait to catch up to them. And while all that's going on, Pretty Penny out of the penalty box and back engaged. And Silicon Valley calls off the jam, not before picking up another 4 points, and that narrows the lead now to 23-32. It's a palindromic score, ladies and gentlemen.
In a matter of 2 jams, closing that gap from about 20 to 10. Serious Business is now on the line for Pikes Peak.
And Evil Twin for Silicon Valley. Evil Twin playing pivot earlier was handed the Jammer Star, and I think they like the way she performed. They're sticking her up on the line right now on her own. And Evil Twin getting bumped to the outside, but not far enough back to have to recycle too far, but she is trapped in the back. And that allows Serious Business to break out as lead jammer. Meanwhile, back in the pack, Evil Twin knocked to the outside. This time is recycled all the way back through turn 1. As the bridging long Pikes Peak defense stretching out. Evil Twin trying to do a little slalom number through him, but catches a hip that knocks her out and has to send her back again, and another big hit at the end of turn 2. Meanwhile, serious business.
Jammer for Pikes Peak finds her way through again. 5 more for them, widening that gap.
And Evil Twin finally escapes the pack, shoves her way past the final blocker for Pikes Peak. And with that, the jam comes to an end with another 4 points on the board for Pikes.
Back on the line for Pikes Peak, that is One Trick Pony, or just Trick Pony.
And she's against Bionic Baby Doll for the Silicon Valley Kamikazes. I hate to jinx it, but empty penalty box right now. Trick Pony starting a bit behind the line, giving herself a chance to get a look at what was going on. She comes up, and that takes her to the front of the pack. Meanwhile, at the little farther to the back, Bionic Baby Doll getting elbowed out. Trick Pony thought she was through clean and could call off the jam, but she picks up a back block, and that is a power jam for Silicon Valley.
This could be their opportunity to close that point gap. The pack being called back. They got to let her go. More points for Silicon Valley.
Pikes Peak trying to bridge farther, but ran out of room. Finally had to let her through. Bionic Baby Doll with a large jump from the out to the in. Managed to take down a blocker by kind of clipping her as she was turning. And that's another 5 points for Silicon Valley. But just like that, Trick Pony out of the penalty box, back engaged with the pack, and she is through. That does count as her initial pass, so no lead jammer there, and also no points. And Bionic Baby Doll calls off the jam. She grabbed 4-1 for Pikes Peak. And now we're down to a 10-point game, 37-47. Pikes Peak holding on to the lead, but Silicon Valley chipping away slowly but surely.
And now on the line for Pikes Peak, that once again, that's Pretty Penny.
And she will be going up against Mad for Gravy. And who isn't Mad for Gravy? Gravy is a fabulous thing. Maybe not to the extent that they eat it in Canada, but we won't go there. Mad for Gravy takes a bit of a check and knocks her back on her seat, but she is back up. However, that allows Pikes Peak to pick up lead jammer once again. As Pretty Penny breaks out, Mad for Gravy.
Mad for Gravy finding her way on the inside.
Just shoulders the blocker out of the way and continues rolling on.
Pretty Penny attempts to call off the jam from the ground. That is that jam.
The wrong number. Still a 10-point game. Ginfluenza jamming for Pikes Peak for Silicon Valley in black. I'm looking at the wrong side of the stupid lineup. I should really pay attention to what I'm
serious
talking
business
about.
Jamming for Pikes Peak.
And the jammer soul crush from Ginfluenza knocks her out, backs her up as her Silicon Valley pack tries to catch up. And that will force poor Serious Business to fight her way back through twice. But it backfires on Ginfluenza as she is also shouldered out and has to recycle behind the Pikes Peak pack. So we're back to where we started. Really?
Some serious strategery there.
And both jammers now out. And I think that was not their initial pass because they both recycled so far back they got to go through again. And that's why no lead jammer is being signaled at this point.
I'm glad that the refs are taking care to keep track of that.
Finally, Ginfluenza escapes the pack for the second time, which is really the first time because the first time didn't count, and she has declared lead jammer. Bit of a micro pack for Pikes Peak with 2 in the box. And they're starting to race things out to try and extend the lead out. Ginfluenza grabs her points, calls off the jam, and that is a 4-0 advantage for Silicon Valley.
This game hovering at about a 10-point difference for the last 4 jams. Trick Pony on the line for Pikes Peak once again.
And for Silicon Valley, we've got Bionic Baby Doll back on the jammer line. Both teams down a blocker. And Trick Pony breaks out and is your lead jammer. Meanwhile, Bionic Baby Doll recycled to the outside, has to back all the way up to the back of the pack, and she is back in the top of turn 2. As Trick Pony with a nice little trick JPEG's jump, leaps over the inside, picks up the 5 points.
It's not very often that Trick Pony is the jammer and not the lead jammer.
Trick Pony enters the pack a little hard, takes a hip. Both skaters go down, no penalty called. Trick Pony picks up a couple of points, but it looks like Silicon Valley grabbed 1 as well. And that takes us to 42-56 with just under 11.5 minutes to go in the half.
And on the line again for Pikes Peak, that's number 6'4", Pretty Penny.
And she is up against number 4, Mad for Gravy for the Silicon Valley Kamikazes in black. And a full pack for both teams. 5-on-5 derby the way it was meant to be.
And Pikes Peak grabs the lead jammer status again. That's Pretty Penny up front, looking to score.
And the pack's jostling for position. Silicon Valley setting up in front. Pikes Peak to the back.
Penny calls it off.
Penny calls it off. I don't believe any points scored for either team. Figured things were getting a little tied up. Might as well call it off and start over. And Silicon Valley will start over with PMS number 24-7 on the line.
While number 007 for Pikes Peak, that's Brass Moose Knuckles.
She is licensed to kill. She has the 00 number. It's legally licensed, at least in Colorado. Slow start to the jam. PMS pushing into the outside. While Brass Moose Knuckles struggling, going in and out, but being stymied by the Silicon Valley defense. PMS escapes the pack, is named lead jammer. And finally, Silicon Valley Brockers have to let Brass Moose Knuckles go. Parker trying to throw a big shoulder to PMS, doesn't get her out. She shrugs it off, picks up the points, calls off the jam. 4-0 advantage, Silicon Valley. 12-point Pikes Peak lead. As we drop close to 9 minutes to go in the half, Ginfluenza jamming for Silicon Valley.
Serious business, number 00 again on the line for Pikes Peak.
And Silicon Valley with a 1 skater advantage in the pack, and that allows Ginfluenza to sort of shimmy her way to the front and break out as lead jammer. And Serious Business finally escaping, but Ginfluenza on her scoring pass. Again, weasels her way past the back wall of Pikes Peak, picks up her 4 points, calls off the jam. And that narrows us down to 8 points.
On the line once again, Trick Pony for Pikes Peak.
And she is up against, I'm looking at the wrong list again, Bionic Baby Doll. I'm like, I know this name. Bionic Baby Doll for Silicon Valley. Gets to the front, but gets shouldered to the infield. Has to cycle well back as she is backed up by the pack. But on the other side, Pikes Peak also rolled back as Trick Pony recycled to the back end, and that allows Bionic Baby Doll to escape the pack as lead jammer. And Bionic Baby Doll rolling through the pack. Grabs her 4 points at about a quarter of a lap lead. Calls off the jam. 4 more for Silicon Valley. Narrowing the lead down to 4 points now. 58 to 54. 7.5 minutes to go in the half.
Number 6-4, that's Pretty Penny on the line there for Pikes Peak.
And that's PMS, number 247 for Silicon Valley. Both jammers taking the outside course. Pretty Penny trying to cut back to the inside, but picks up the forearm penalty. So we have got a 30-second power jam for PMS. And Silicon Valley and PMS is through the pack and is lead jammer.
This could be the moment they've been waiting for to close that point gap.
Could be our first lead change of the game. And right there we have it with 5 points on that pass. That takes Silicon Valley to 59 to Pikes Peak's 58. As the pack starts to thin slightly as Pikes Peak, or as Silicon Valley losing a blocker. Pia struggles past the bridging lengthy defense of Pikes Peak, but picks up another 5.
And we have a lead change on the board as Silicon 64 and Pikes Peak is at 58. That was an exciting jam.
And PMS rolls through, picks up another 4 points before wisely calling off the jam, extending that Silicon Valley lead a little more. Now 10-point lead, 68 to 58. And with the lead change, you're officially allowed to have a beverage. Mad for Gravy jamming for Silicon Valley.
While serious business on the line for Pikes Peak once again.
Pikes Peak with the pack advantage with 4 blockers to 3 for Silicon Valley. And Mad for Gravy trapped behind all 4 of those blockers at the back, but finds a little gap on the outside, dodges to the in, and picks up lead jammer. Silicon Valley doing a great job lately of grabbing lead jammer and taking full advantage of it.
Business takes a big hit up front, but they got to let her go.
And while she is out, Mad for Gravy is back in contact with the pack. Here's her bench calling for it, calls off the jam. Only grabs 1 point, but that's 1 point more than Pikes Peak.
For Pikes Peak, one more time, it's Trick Pony on the line.
And Ginfluenza for Silicon Valley. Ginfluenza dodges to the front, hops to the outside, and she is through and is your lead jammer.
Trick Pony makes her way through too.
Meanwhile, coming through on her scoring pass, Ginfluenza jukes a couple skaters to the outside before cutting in. Breaks away, looks back, sees where Trick Pony is, calls off the jam. 4-0 advantage, Silicon Valley.
Ginfluenza looking to hold that point line where it is. Calls off that jam.
And now we're at 72 to 58 with just under 4 minutes to go in this half. Bionic Baby Doll with the jammer star for Silicon Valley.
On the line for Pikes Peak, that's 64. Once again, Pretty Penny.
And both packs at full strength. Pretty Penny pushing up to the outside, then finds a gap on the inside. While at the back of the pack, Bionic Baby Doll gets caught up, turned around, knocked to the ground,
As
and also picks up a forearm penalty.
Both teams
So we will have a power
losing a
jam,
member.
Pikes Peak. And with this power jam could be what Pikes Peak needs to turn this tide around. They do have a one skater pack advantage, but they are playing that passive offense, waiting for their jammer to shove the pack forward. Unfortunately, the Silicon Valley defense not really wanting to play that game. Jem Jones with some excellent chest-to-chest sternum action. Finally has to let Pretty Penny through. 5 points for Pikes Peak. As she comes in on her second scoring pass. Silicon Valley rolling another blocker around to support that front wall. Forces Pretty Penny to call it off. No points that pass, but they do narrow the lead down now to 73-71, a 2-point game with just a bit over 2 minutes to go in the half.
On the line right now for Pikes Peak. Once again, that's serious business. She's getting a serious workout today. This is her second game, and she's been jamming about every third jam.
And she's up against 24/7 PMS. Pia sliding to the outside, gets not even a hip check, more of a hip just sort of push to the outside, and that recycles her well back. While at the front, serious business, stretches the pack out enough, and she is free.
Here
Both
comes.
with both jammers out, pack's starting to speed things up a bit. As Pikes Peak lines up to the back. And with that, PMS able to grab 2 points just before the jam was called off. Sneaks past those back few blockers.
Just over a minute to go. Looking at a 4-point game in this half. Trick Pony is on the line for Pikes Peak again.
And she is skating against Ginfluenza for San Jose's Silicon Valley Roller Girls .kamikazes. And Ginfluenza starting to the outside, and Trick Pony says, I'm going to go exactly where you are, which somehow worked. You wouldn't expect two bodies occupying the same space would work, but it did. Up to the point where she picked up the forearm penalty. And now we have a power jam for Silicon Valley. As Ginfluenza knocked to the outside, did not have to recycle all the way back, and is declared lead jammer. Lead jammer on the power jam as Silicon Valley assuming that split sausage passive offense plan. They try to open the door, eventually works out as Ginfluenza able to stretch the pack out far enough, pick up the 5-point grand slam.
Widening that gap to a 9-point game. Fighting through the wall once again, but losing it at the front.
Ginfluenza had re-entered the pack, but she picks up a forearm, and that means it's power jam Pikes Peak now. And this will go for the remaining 40 seconds of the jam. As Pretty Penny takes a bit of a hit, goes to the ground. Silicon Valley trying to stretch out their defense as far as they can. They finally have to let her go. And she only grabs 4 points with the no pass, no penalty. Another passive offense entrance. And they managed to work out a cut track for Pretty Penny. So it's back to power jam for Silicon Valley.
That's the jam, and that looks like that's the half for this game between Pikes Peak Derby Dames and Silicon Valley Roller Girls.
And we've got a 9-point game at this point, 85 for the .kamikazes of Silicon Valley to 77 for the Pikes Peak All-Stars. And we will be back in 15 minutes.
While we clear the track, we want to thank some of our sponsors. First of all, Sizzle Pie at the corner of Broadway and Willamette. Death to false pizza. Sizzle Pie. Also, we'd like to thank LTD, that's a Lane Transit District, for supporting the Big O. Check out the One Pass. For only $50, your kids can access Willamette Lane facilities and unlimited LTD rides all summer. That's the One Pass from the LTD.
And for a little Big O fun fact stats, do you know there are 112 officials between the referees and the NSOs? 112 officials here helping out. And I would like to thank each and every one of them personally, but I won't. So I'll just say thank you to everyone, whether on skates in the stripes or off skates in the pink. They are all awesome. We also have 36 teams, 17 of them WFTDA. Also have 4 women's B teams. We got 7 men's teams and 7 junior teams. Definitely looking forward to the junior action tomorrow and Sunday. And also Team USA representatives will be here on Sunday night for our big finale Team USA versus Big O MVP bout. That's happening at 7 o'clock on Sunday. It's the last game of the tournament. The teams will vote 1 MVP blocker and 1 jammer from the opposing team for each game that are played in the WFTDA games, like this one here. And those MVPs will team up to play against Team USA, who, according to this sheet, and I would agree, are the best skaters in the world. But that's getting ahead of ourselves by a day and a half. Right now, we've still got some Silicon Valley versus Pikes Peak, and the score remains 85-77, so it did not change during halftime. That's good.
So
PMS.
far, a great matchup. The cliche goes, anybody's game. That's definitely the case here.
Pikes Peak building up a big lead earlier, and then Silicon Valley chipping away and finally taking it back. PMS is starting off on the power jam. And she is pushing to the front and pushing the Pikes Peak pack to the front as far as they can. They finally have to let her go. Lead jammer PMS of Silicon Valley.
Pikes Peak at a
Silicon
disadvantage right now in more than one way. The pack spreads out. They got to let her go again. That's 5 more going towards Silicon Valley.
Silicon Valley taking full advantage of that passive offense with the smaller pack. But now as the Pikes Peak jammer re-enters, they're forced to engage. They push her to the front, but also knock her to the outside. That remains Trick Pony. Jammer picked up the penalty at the end of the first half. And PMS is able to slide through and grab 5 more points for Silicon Valley.
Do not count out Pikes Peak. And especially Trick Pony.
And PMS picking up a back block. That will send her to the box. And that will lead this jam to run the remaining 47 seconds to its natural conclusion. As Trick Pony grabbing 4 points on that pass. And then the thumb comes out to her 5, picking up the jammer point for PMS sitting in the penalty box. The ghost point, if you will. Trick Pony through again for yet another 5-point pass.
Helping out with the point spread there. But they lose 2 players just as it starts looking like their advantage.
Bell ringer trying to knock Trick Pony out and just misses on the shoulder check. Meanwhile, PMS back on the track and rolling through. She picks up 4 on that pass, while Trick Pony grabbed 5. Time runs out on the jam, and we're down to 99-92. Dot Kamikaze's just under the century mark. And they will send Ginfluenza to the line up against Pretty Penny for Pikes Peak. Silicon Valley with a 4-on-2 pack advantage. Trying to both open a door for Ginfluenza and hold Pretty Penny back. Ginfluenza is through.
While Pretty Penny contends with the wall of black and green up front.
Pikes Peak getting some relief as their jammers come out, or their blockers rather, released from the box. That will take them back to even. Ginfluenza, meanwhile, manages to roll past Pretty Penny.
Ginfluenza taking the role of blocker and jammer, something that seems to be necessary in modern roller derby.
Trying to work up the eat the baby, but not quite able to consume the aforementioned baby, as Pretty Penny is able to break free of the pack.
Through the wall, she throws herself and calls it off on the ground.
2 more points for Silicon Valley on that pass, and that pushes them past the 100-point mark to 106, as Pikes Peak remains at 92.
And on the line for Pikes Peak, again, that's serious business.
And she's skating against Bionic Baby Doll for Silicon Valley. Jammer splitting the pack. Pikes Peak going to the outside while Silicon Valley heading for the in. Bionic Baby Doll hung up in the back.
The green wall on the back was effective because your lead jammer is from Pikes Peak. Once again, that's serious business. Grabbing lead jammer status.
And she is being chased down by Bionic Baby Doll as the pack trying to set itself up. Serious business able to sneak past a couple of Silicon Valley blockers at the back of the pack. Picks up 2, taking them to 94.
And on the line for Pikes Peak, again, that's Trick Pony. Like I said, they already skated about 2 hours ago. They're keeping the speed up very well considering that.
And Mad for Gravy jamming for Silicon Valley. Both teams narrowing down their jammer rotations this half, at least to start it off. Trick Pony up at the front, 2 wall to beat, finally stretches the pack far enough that she is through and is lead jammer. Meanwhile, Mad for Gravy knocked to the inside by Destiny Blaze, and Destiny backs her well up and recycles her again, and this is allowing Trick Pony to catch up to the pack. Almost lap the jammer, but not quite. And Trick Pony picks up a cut track penalty. So we will have Power Jam for Silicon Valley.
Power Jam with a full crew of blockers until they lose their pivot. And now the advantage seems to be with Silicon Valley. She gets through and grabs 5 more.
Mad for Gravy in quite the shoving match at the front of that pack, with 2 skaters trying to hold her back and her up on the toe stops trying to push forward, and she manages to push them far enough that they had to let her go.
The pack is spread out far enough.
Mad for Gravy trying to call off the jam. Unable to, as she's not indicated as lead jammer. Finally figures that out. She had been recycled to the outside. That was why she was attempting the call off. And meanwhile, Trick Pony back in the pack, off of her penalty.
Taking a beating in the middle of that wall of black. She still gets ahead and grabs some points.
And both jammers picking up 5 points there.
It's good to see that sometimes.
And both re-engaging now as Trick Pony knocked to the inside. Mad for Gravy struggling to the front, also gets knocked to the infield. And time finally runs out on the jam. 1 point picked up by Pikes Peak, 2 for Silicon Valley. And after all the adjustments, that takes Pikes Peak to 100. Silicon Valley to 118.
An eventful jam for sure. On the line now for Pikes Peak is 64. Brady Penny once again.
And she is up against 222 Ginfluenza. And we've got an official timeout called. Straighten out some scoring, I believe.
And while we wait for that, we'd like to thank one of our sponsors. That's K-Duck 104.7. K-Duck, my hits right now.
And it looks like one of those in that jam where we had 2 jammers with 5 points, one of those was really a 4. So it's now 117 Kamikazes to 100 for the Pikes Peak Derby Dames All-Stars. And while I was saying that, there was skating going on, and Ginfluenza broke out of the pack as lead jammer.
Some confusion about where the pack is, and Pretty Penny is called to the bench.
So another power jam for Silicon Valley. That's Ginfluenza lining up to the outside, sees a spot on the inside, jukes to the in, easy pass through, quick 5 points for the Dot Kamikazes. Absolutely scabulous in the Silicon Valley defense, making it move like they were opening up a wall to the outside. Meanwhile, Ginfluenza dancing around the infield to pick up points.
These last two jams seem to be setting the stage for the final chapter of this bout. Spreading out the point spread a bit more than it was throughout the rest of this bout.
Ginfluenza threw for 5 points. Pretty Penny out of the penalty box and also finally threw on her initial pass. And Ginfluenza checked to the outside and calls off the jam.
Back on the line for Pikes Peak, that's Serious Business, number 00.
And she will skate again against Bionic Baby Doll. Silicon Valley able to stretch their lead out to 37 points now, 137 to 100.
Not an insurmountable difference in points.
Not at all. Pikes Peak up by close to that, I think, in the first half. Pikes Peak defense, however, one skater shy as Parker is sitting in the sin bin. They are, however, able to hip check Bionic Baby Doll outside and recycle her well back. And another excellent check by number 52, Cat Balak and Baloo. And that allows Serious Business to break out of the pack and pick up lead jammer.
Business taking a beating up front on turn 3, recycles herself as the pack.
And at the front, Bionic Baby Doll also cycled to the outside and has to back up. A lot of recycling in this jam.
Well, this is a green event, so it makes sense.
As long as they don't start composting each other, we'll all be fine.
There comes a jammer. Serious Business up front. She's your lead jammer, grabbing 5.
5 points as the Pikes Peak defense really stepping it up on Bionic Baby Doll, not letting her through once yet. Every time she gets close, someone will hip or shoulder her out. And Serious Business taking a heavy hit. Thanks to the medics here. Make sure everybody's staying safe. And let's have a warm round of applause for Serious Business. She will have to sit for 3 jams because of the injury. But it's good to see she's all right.
Like I said before, these ladies from Pikes Peak are skating their second bout of the day and have all had a pretty good workout. It's amazing to see them bounce back like that.
Man for gravy jamming for Silicon Valley.
And that's Trick Pony again on the line for Pikes Peak, having her 4th win. Official timeout being called. Possibility to review the last play. There was a lot going on in that last play.
That there wasn't. There's a lot going on in this raffle thing. So the raffle, as I mentioned earlier, you buy a ticket for $1 or several tickets for several dollars and so forth. But what is in this raffle package, you say? Well, how about a straight razor shave from Agent Orange, or a couple of MVP skater passes to RollerCon, gift certificate for a dozen donuts from Voodoo Donuts, gift certificate for Wicked Skatewear. You get some wheels from Rydell Skates, gift certificates from Noodle Company, all kinds of good stuff in this package. Go buy your raffle ticket. Drawings tomorrow night and Sunday night, but I'm sure if you buy a ticket today, it's still good on those days.
Back to gameplay. Trick Pony jamming for Pikes Peak again.
And Mad for Gravy knocked to the infield and recycled well to the back of the pack.
Trick Pony grabbing lead jammer status, taking some and giving some up front.
And Bell Ringer sent to the box. That takes the Silicon Valley pack down to 2. And that's not making life easy for Mad for Gravy. But it is making it easy for Trick Pony, who has a wide open highway around the inside of the track, grabbing another 5 points.
An easy inside pass and a little chase at the end, but that counts for 5 more for Trick Pony.
As Mad for Gravy again knocked outside at the top of turn 2. That's not been her best place this jam. Seems like she comes in, somebody hits her out, and she has to recycle all the way back, and this is just allowing Trick Pony to rack up the points. Finally, Mad for Gravy out of the box.
We're looking at a 3-point game.
And Trick Pony calls off the jam.
It just got exciting, people. Again.
Just not enough gas in the tank to accelerate up for another pass. Might as well call it off. Rolling it this close, 134, 137. Pikes Peak doing a great job of narrowing that gap down. 17.5 minutes to go. Ginfluenza on the line for Silicon Valley.
While Pikes Peak has number 6'4", again, that's Pretty Penny on the line. Feeling the squeeze at the back of the pack.
It's like they're trying to get onto a Japanese bullet train. Just all that pushing. That wouldn't be very easy on skates, I don't think, though.
Major recycle for Penny. But she makes it through on the inside on turn 2.
Daisy Dukem thought that was clean, but she just moved the arm enough to make it a penalty. Pretty Penny, however, lead jammer. Sneaks those hips in front of a couple of skaters, picks up 2 points. Further narrowing that lead.
Still sitting at only a 3-point game. Serious business on the line for Pikes Peak.
And she is up against Bionic Baby Doll. Bionic Baby Doll for the Silicon Valley Roller Girls. Dot Kamikazes in black, taking the outside lane. And it is successful as she breaks free for lead jammer. Meanwhile, Serious Business takes 2 consecutive hips that finally knock her out. And that allows Bionic Baby Doll to pick up the jammer lap point and the 5-point grand slam. And as the pack again trying to shuffle, get people in the right line, Bionic Baby Doll breaks in, calls off the jam, and picks up 3 points in the process.
Still at just over 15 minutes. This game could go either way. And we've seen the lead change 3 times.
Yes, 9-point lead, nothing to relax about. PMS jamming right now for Silicon Valley.
While Trick Pony is jamming for Pikes Peak.
Both jammers starting to the outside. Trick Pony cuts to the in. PMS following her as Trick Pony bumps back to the outside. PMS finds a little gap in the front, breaks out in his lead jammer. Meanwhile, Demand a Rumble, knocking Pretty Pony out, or Trick Pony out rather.
Trick Pony, great effort to get through that inside. Makes it, but she's not your lead jammer.
And big pile up in turn 2. PMS trying to signal to call off the jam. Wasn't finally able to, but not before. Pikes Peak picks up a couple of points. Now 5 points, 140 to 145.
On the line again for Pikes Peak, that's number 6-4, Pretty Penny.
And she is jamming against Ginfluenza, but first we will have an official review.
And whilst we wait for the official review, we'd like to thank Aaron's. Thanks to Aaron's lease-to-own furniture and appliances. Aaron's right over there on West 11th here in Eugene.
And if you haven't been over to the merchandise area in Track 1, I suggest you do, because you can get things from Rydell. There's a roller doll booth. You got Skate Geeks, Sweat Hogs. If you're like me and you don't have a lot of hair on the top of your head, and when you do an active sport, you sweat like a pig, well, Sweat Hogs can help you out. Keep that sweat out of your eyes. Also stuff from Team USI, Thrive, and Zemo Rocks. And as was mentioned earlier, this is a green event, Big O, first certified socially and environmentally responsible roller derby event. As a green event, we do encourage you to please use the receptacles for composting and recycling. Put the recyclables in the recycling one, though, not in the compost one. That doesn't work.
We'd also like to thank Oakshire Brewery, Oakshire Brewing, Strength, Independence, and Community. Still waiting on the official review.
Our head ref talking to the coaches.
Hoping to find out what it was about and what the outcome ends up being.
The black team was reviewing that the call-off was done late. After review, the call was late. We agree. Black team retains their review.
What was?
And with that, we're back to roller derby. Ginfluenza jamming, as mentioned before, for Silicon Valley.
Wow, Pretty Pennies on the line for Pikes Peak.
And both jammers caught up in the scrum as the pack rolls along slowly, but a big pileup breaks Pretty Penny free.
Pretty Penny makes her way to the front. She's your lead jammer. This is their chance to close that 5-point gap before the numbers run out on the clock.
Ginfluenza chasing her down, and both packs trying to race it. Pikes Peak tries to open the door for Pretty Penny, not able to do so. No points, as she is forced to call off the jam before Ginfluenza could pick up any points. And so we will reset with Mad for Gravy jamming for Silicon Valley.
While Business is on the line again for Pikes Peak.
That is some serious business for Gravy. And the penalty box once again is empty. 5-on-5 roller derby. Mad for Gravy trying to find a hole up the outside, but Pikes Peak is there to meet her. She falls to the ground, is not technically recycled, but the pack passed her up, so effectively recycled. Meanwhile, at the front, Serious Business struggling with a 2-wall. Finally gets past the last line of defense to Amanda Rumble. While at the back, Mad for Gravy not finding any luck. Does grab one and picks up the... Almost had the cut track, but I think they determined the foot went out after she was past everyone.
Business calls it off after grabbing 4 more.
And that takes us to a 1-point game with just under 12 minutes to go. Pikes Peak now doing what Silicon Valley did earlier, just chipping away a little bit at a time.
Resting on the capable shoulders of Trick Pony. Official review being called for Pikes Peak.
And while they review that, we'll mention some more vendors to thank you. I'd like to thank all of the vendors for coming and for sharing things. And you know somebody who's needs some derby gifts, head over to Track 1. Pick them up something from Armored Rose or Bont, perhaps a bruised skate noose. Those are kind of cool, so you don't have to keep your skates in your bag. You can hang them over your shoulder. Also a booth over there from Fast Girl Skates and Fingers Duke and Flat Track Revolution. Please go visit all of our wonderful vendors and support them because they help support us and make this possible.
Would also like to thank Dairy Mart. Dairy Mart is a local store here in Eugene and the surrounding areas. Dairy Mart, our family's best for almost 50 years. It's a convenience store for those who aren't from here.
That is a long time to be convenient.
I'd also like to thank Sizzle Pie one more time. Sizzle Pie at the corner of Broadway and Willamette. Sizzle Pie, death to false pizza.
What did the false pizza ever do to them? They got to kill it. Hey, we're back.
A potentially super important jam here.
Potentially with that 1-point score gap, and now Pikes Peak with lead jammer for Trick Pony.
Trick Pony grabbing that lead jammer status, giving her all the benefits therein, including calling off the jam, which she attempted, and finally got her point across.
But Bionic Baby Doll sneaking in behind her before the whistles blew, picked up 2 points. So it looks like a 2-0 wrap there. Nope, maybe, nope, sorry, must have been 2-2 because we got 147 to 146.
Back to a 1-point game. Pretty Penny on the line again for Pikes Peak.
And Ginfluenza again for Silicon Valley. As Silicon Valley going back to the same couple of jammers over and over. Ginfluenza knocked out. Does not come back in quite in time to get the cut track that they were trying for, and finds a nice open lane on the outside and picks up lead jammer. Meanwhile, Pretty Penny shrugs off a block to the outside by Evil Twin and manages to escape the pack. But at the front of the pack, Ginfluenza with a beautiful inside to outside hop move grabs the 4 points and extends the Silicon Valley lead up to 5.
And we're back to a 5-point game as Serious Business takes the line for Pikes Peak.
Up again against Mad for Gravy. Seriously mad for gravy business. 3-on-4 pack advantage for Silicon Valley. As both jammers pushing up the middle, but Mad for Gravy finds a line on the inside, hops over a foot, and she is through as lead jammer.
This game started out with serious momentum for Pikes Peak and has been even ever since.
Pikes Peak defense lining up at the very back of the pack. Silicon Valley now trying to break that wall up. But Mad for Gravy knocked out. Realizes serious business was coming up, calls off the jam. 1 point for Silicon Valley. 0 for Pikes.
Back to a 6-point game and back to Trick Pony jamming for Pikes Peak.
And also back to PMS jamming for Silicon Valley. And back to a full pack on both sides. And as the whistle goes, PMS heading up the outside. Pikes Peak trying to line up in the back, but there was a little gap for her to break through, but then she gets hung up in the back, cuts to the inside, finds a narrow gap, and she is out. Trick Pony, meanwhile, taking a hip check from Evil Twin. And also picking up the low block, and that will send her to the penalty box, and that will be a power jam for PMS and the Silicon Valley Roller Girls. PM making one pass through the pack already, now coming in on her second scoring pass. And running into quite the wall from Pikes Peak, however, a wall assisted by a little forearm from Daisy Dukem. And Pia knocked again to the infield, but another penalty, 2 penalties, knocking the Pikes Peak pack down to 1 skater on the track currently.
Pikes Peak finding themselves in foul trouble, but get their jammer back just in time.
Pikes Peak now with 2 on the track, 2 in the box in the pack. And PMS struggling to work her way past the last blocker. Finally calls off the jam. Wanted to get those last points. And the Dot Kamikazes extending their lead now 166 to 146, back up to 20 with just under 7 minutes to go in the game.
Pretty Penny taking the line again for Pikes Peak.
Up against Ginfluenza for Silicon Valley.
A matchup we've seen several times already this evening.
Now we have both teams running about a 3-skater jammer rotation.
Possible delay of game call.
I think we're working out some, perhaps whether she was a must skate due to a penalty situation. I'm sure they'll work it out.
20-point difference, but not, like I said before, not insurmountable. That could be a single jam.
So yes, I believe she had picked up a penalty and the penalty box was full, so she was a must skate for this jam. But now that the blocker is standing, she is a must sit for the start of this jam. And Pikes Peak will pull another blocker off and start off with a single skater pack. Not really the way you want to start a jam.
Penny looks forward to a wall and a battle in those first 20 seconds.
And Pretty Penny starting off on defense as the jammer. As Ginfluenza with one blocker, now two, as the second Pikes Peak blocker was sent from the box. And those two doing a great job of knocking her out.
Still
and that allows a little time for the third to enter back in.
An amazing effort by Penny and her team to break through that wall while Silicon Valley loses their jammer. This could be an opportunity. Not what they expected at the beginning of this jam. It didn't seem like opportunity was knocking, but that's how quickly it can turn around. Flat track roller derby.
Certainly could be with the power jam for Pikes Peak. And no lead jammer. Going for another minute and 12 seconds. Plenty of time to rack up a whole chunk of points.
Bringing it down to a 14-point difference from just minutes ago, 20 points.
And the pack stretching out. That's Pretty Penny re-engaging.
As Pretty Penny saunters to the front, and they got to let her go. Grabbing more points, closing that gap.
And Ginfluenza, rolling through, had pulled the jammer star off of her helmet. Did not pass it off, however, puts it back on as she emerges from the pack. Gets shouldered out, recycles back in just ahead, and it's another 30-second power jam for Pikes Peak.
We're only at a 6-point difference now. I'm sorry, we're at a 1-point difference now.
Got to get those 5 points in, and that is no longer a 1-point difference. That's now a 4-point difference as we have another lead change. Pikes Peak taking the lead on that pass as time runs out on the jam.
Another very seriously important lead change. I'm pretty sure it's number 4 or 5 for this game.
Very close to that. 170 to 166, 4 minutes, 21 seconds to go. As Pikes Peak starting on the power start.
Serious business on the line once again for Pikes Peak.
Pikes Peak does have a skater disadvantage in the pack with only 3 blockers, but they're starting at the power jam, so they're starting in the passive offense anyway. So that 1 blocker disadvantage not so huge as they're just standing and waiting for serious business to break through.
And she does just that. Well, they hold the line against the Silicon Valley jammer.
Ginfluenza again being knocked to the outside before working her way in. Again, pulls off the jammer star. The attempt to pass, but does not complete the attempt.
Business ahead, again, grabbing a couple more points, 5 more points. This game just changed dramatically. Just over 3 minutes to go.
Ginfluenza finally through on her initial pass. Having finally made it through the pack with the star on. 4 more points for Pikes Peak. A 9+ jam, and that takes them to 179 to 166 now with just under 3 minutes to go. Silicon Valley will send PMS to the line as we have an official review called by Silicon Valley.
And while that review happens, we'd like to thank a couple more sponsors. Once again, we'd like to thank Ninkasi, the official beer of Emerald City Roller Girls. Ninkasi, if you haven't had it, you got to try it.
Ninkasi, a native Eugene beer, I understand, right?
It's made right here, about a mile from here in the Whitaker neighborhood. It's a beautiful facility. You got to go check it out. Ninkasi Brewery.
What was the story? So in case you were wondering why San Jose has another official review, they won their earlier one. Therefore, they got to keep their official review. Hey, let's have some more fun stats, shall we? There are roughly 300 volunteers, and that doesn't count the announcers or the officials. 300 people in the green shirts helping everybody out. Go out of your way to thank them. As far as our furthest traveled team, that would be the Kokeshi Roller Girls coming from Japan. They traveled about 5,800 miles. Aldriki out of Edinburgh, Scotland, about 4,690 miles. And just slightly less than that is the announcer Bulldog, who came over from Glasgow, Scotland. He says it's about an hour closer to here by train. So I don't know what that works out into miles because they're in Scotland and it's all kilometers, and that just doesn't make any sense to me.
Back to action.
Back to action with PMS jamming for Silicon Valley. Trick pony for the now leading Pikes Peak. And PMS trapped at the very back of the pack.
Pony finds her way up front. She is your lead jammer. This game has taken a dramatic change just in the last minute and a half. About 2 minutes to go, 2.5 minutes to go.
2.5 minutes is definitely going to be a battle of who can stay on the track and who can get lead jammer, and Trick Pony is doing both of those right now. Racking up 5 points with the lap point for lapping PMS. And wisely shutting things down, calling off the jam, taking that 5-0 jump. Extending their lead now to 14, 184 to 170.
Back on the line for Pikes Peak, that's Pretty Penny, number 6'4".
And Ginfluenza again for Silicon Valley. Ginfluenza having a tough time her last bout, jam out. Getting repeatedly cycled to the outside in turn 1. Definitely hoping for better luck this time. And she will start off with a little hip check to Pretty Penny, trying to knock her off her stride, but doesn't do so. She goes to her knee, and Pretty Penny is through and is lead jammer.
Pretty Penny grabs lead jammer right away after contending with a little jam on jam at the line. This is one of those jams that could determine the outcome of this game. She calls it off.
3 points for Silicon Valley, just 1 for Pikes Peak. But as we dip down to a minute, that's 185 to 173, a 12-point lead still for Pikes Peak.
And that clock
certainly
keeps
not
moving.
Yep, clock keeps ticking, but certainly not insurmountable. Mad for Gravy. Going to try and pick up those 12 points for Silicon Valley.
Business on the line for Pikes Peak.
And a 3-on-2 pack advantage for Silicon Valley. And Mad for Gravy almost out of the pack, but trips herself up and not quite able to escape. And that ties up one of her blockers as well. Now at the front of the pack with just 2 blockers to beat is Serious Business. Serious Business is through and is your lead jammer.
Business has the clock on her side. She needs to roll it down and roll it out.
Business trying to slow Mad for Gravy down, trying to keep her behind her, doesn't want to let her by. She's playing nothing but defensive jamming because she knows she's got the lead and she's got time to kill. Meanwhile, Silicon Valley at the front of the pack trying to slow the pack down to allow Business to catch up. Another Pikes Peak jam blocker is out of the penalty box and slowing things down. That's Daisy Dukem. Business calls off the jam. 1 point for Silicon Valley. And at least judging from Trick Pony's reaction, I'm pretty certain they think that Pikes Peak has pulled off the win.
We wait for the official score.
Certainly looks that way from the unofficial scoreboard up top. Jam refs are checking, making sure everything was added up correctly.
For now, we can say this for sure. It was an exciting game with 4 lead changes and no more than 10 points difference for about 3/4 of it. I loved announcing that game.
Let's give a big round of applause to the Pikes Peak Roller Dames.
Also a big thank you to Silicon Valley for coming all the way up the I-5 corridor.
Yes, let's give a big high five and a big round of applause to the Silicon Valley Roller Girls .kamikazes. We good? And I think that's official. Pikes Peak 185, Silicon Valley Kamikazes 174. Stick around and/or come back. Next up on this track number 3, the 8:30 game will be a men's roller derby, ladies and gentlemen. From up the road, the Portland Bridgetown Menace up against Drive-By City.